What is critical is that people feel that they are represented in the election machinery or have access to it. It's not simply electoral violence. It's really faith and trust in the elections themselves. That really has two aspects to it. It has what we call the technical aspect, that is, how well is the election organized, at least in regard to the acceptability of the results. Will people accept the results as a fair reflection of the opinion of people? And for that, really, there's much that can be done, and the UN makes a considerable contribution in deriving arrangements which would satisfy people that the electoral results are fair. Proper observation, transparency, proper electoral management bodies, an electoral dispute mechanism which is accessible and is seen to be run by fair and disinterested judges. So all of those are important in getting people to accept the results. But that's only part. It's less than 50% of the issue. The Secretary General has underlined how important it is to build that trust equally in regard to the political environment in which the elections take place. We have to understand what political forces are in play and what the potential is for free and fair elections. There's a connection between the technical conditions and the political conditions. If the technical conditions look as if the elections are set up to favor one party, they're just a game, then the political conditions and perspectives on the elections are going to be difficult. There will be lack of trust in the results and in the process. So there is obviously a connection between the two. I think the most important engagement is in fact the political engagement, because that goes to the heart of the issue, which is trust in the result. What we've noticed is that some results are clearly acceptable to the population, even though we may have problems with it ourselves as experts. And the opposite is also true. When we adjudge the results, the mechanisms and arrangements to be perfect, we might frequently find that the population simply doesn't accept it because of the lack of political trust. So to that extent, elections will always be coloured by the political environment and political preconditions. Well, I think generally in the approach in almost all the cases that I'm aware of, the UN would at the outset try and get an assurance from the parties that they will accept the result. If you can do that in advance of the elections, it's a significant aid to the post-election drama. There are clearly a number of ways in which we could assist. We could review parts of the electoral process which are under attack or under criticism. But at every point, it's really about securing the loser's willingness to accept the result. And as I indicated earlier, there are some times when it's not the electoral process at all. The electoral process is the smoke screen behind which there's a more fundamental inequality at play, or a disenfranchisement, or a marginalization that has not so much to do with the arrangements for the elections as the sense that the stakes in the society, the playing field, is heavily tilted away from a group or a minority. To start off with South Sudan, we recognize that the agenda we've set ourselves can't be accomplished by ourselves alone. We need support from other players, multilateral players, member states, constellations of member states. We need that so that we have a unified face as the international community in regard to difficult electoral issues and acceptability of the result. We need it so that divisions are not driven between the AU and the UN, for example. So we need to present a shoulder-to-shoulder unity in regard to redress if there's been problems, or acceptability if we judge that there hasn't. So on the one hand, it increases our leverage to have our collegial organizations weigh in with us, but it's also good practice because it puts us all on the same page, and I think there are real comparative advantages to different organizations. The UN tends to have quite considerable electoral resources at hand because it participates in so many electoral exercises. But the African Union has quite strong normative values relating to the conduct of elections, and it seems to me that they have a particular advantage in coming to the table to drive home normative values. I do think that it's important just to emphasize inclusivity, fairness of the election machinery, transparency in both establishing the rules which govern the establishment of electoral mechanisms and in ensuring transparency also in the way the election is conducted. But above all, I have always argued for an earlier involvement in the political question because I think if the political environment has soured, it's difficult to see how the technical arrangements can overcome that. So, and it's an area that we don't always feel confident in and competent in, but it is perhaps the most important indicator of whether our engagement is going to be successful or not.